everyone. In this video clip, Father Nielsen and Dr. Risden and I talk about the subjective nature of the humanities, and especially how they navigate that in a school setting. So when you're looking at a science or a math class, there's a lot more clear defined rules about when something is good or bad, when something is A quality work, B quality work, all the way down the spectrum. So when you're looking at writing a paper or completing a graphic design project or a painting, those are ill-defined lines for what makes something good or bad. It's so much more subjective than many other disciplines, and especially in a school setting, I wondered how these two professors dealt with explaining this to students and grading assignments. Not only did we dive into that, which I know some students are going to be really interested in hearing about, but we also talk about the editing process when you're working on an art piece or a piece of literature or prose. Because this discipline is quite subjective, I wondered how they drew the line when they were done with editing. When they said, okay, this is good enough to present to the world, or I just can't touch this or look at this anymore. So take a listen at what they have to say about that. And if you want to hear more when you're done, I will have the other two video clips linked below, as well as my full video conversation with these two amazing professors. And check out the podcast component of these conversations that will be linked down below. The podcasts are a bit different than the videos. Obviously, it's going to be audio instead of visual. But in addition, I also include more background research and information in those. But without further ado, here is Dr. Risden and Father Nielsen. A lot of students get frustrated with that too. They're like, how do I know if this is good or not? Or what's the point of it? How do you sort of like approach that with the value of studying the humanities when it's so amorphous?
You have to feel compelled to go out to look at other work, even if you don't want to here, because you're going to learn something, and it may percolate for a while. This is what we don't want to discount. I suppose it's true for being a good writer. You need to read, right?
Yeah.
Not that we're slavishly copying, but that we're seeing color, you're seeing texture, you're seeing form, and that sort of business here, and allowing that to percolate, right? A verb that a lot of students don't understand is seeing it now is going to reward you in the future, right?
And you don't know how.
You don't know how, no, but you have to be very consistent in going to galleries, seeing the real work here, or going online. This sort of business, that's sort of like third best in a way, but to see the real thing is really important here. And then cultivating that community that's willing to speak to you about that. I had the best advice ever from Jim Cagle, our professor here a number of years earlier. He told us in class, he goes, do not listen to your friends when they speak about your work, only listen to me. Your friends will flatter you. Your friends will flatter you. They don't know what I know, so you only listen to me. And I said, I would follow you anywhere after saying that. And of course, everybody's looking at each other and saying, oh my God, you can't talk to me. But there was something about that, sort of acquiescing to authority, in a sense, to he or she who's the expert at that moment.
Don't listen just to one, listen to many. And listen to the critical voices and listen to the encouraging voices. Even if your friends say nice things to you because they're your friends, sometimes you need some encouragement. Sometimes that's what you need. And if they can give you that at that time, don't necessarily believe if they say that this is the best story that I've ever seen in the world that anyone has ever done, and I so love you, my friend. And that's not that. But sometimes, because as you said, one gets discouraged. And if somebody gives you encouragement at a time when you need it, that can really help.
Next, we dove into how these two men approach the editing process. They have a really interesting discussion of letting the work become what it wants to be and what it needs to be. So I'll let them explain that because they're much more eloquent than I am.
You reach intermediate points that make sense to you. A project can take the books I've done. I've written a book in 3 months. I've written a book over 20 years. So it comes to fruition whenever it does. It's funny you'd say does the editing process get frustrating, and how do you know when it's done? My sister just did her very first book, just published it about a little over a month ago, and she sent me an email with exactly the same question. She said, how do I know when I'm done? I have it written, I've been editing it, I've done the best job I can on it. How do I know if it's done? And I wrote back and I said, one day you decide done or not, you're sending it in. But at some point you let that work go, because you realize that's part of the process. You work on that as long as you are ready and willing to work on that. And then you work on something else.
Happy accident, right? Phyllis Coupa. This is what we like sometimes. And that, we don't want to discount the fact that that could happen. Not having that was on the radar at all, then something begins to emerge. And so make room for surprise. That's the best way to answer your question.
My phrase for that is let the work become what it wants to become.
Sure. You know,
The same idea, exactly.
that's right.
I might think I'm writing a poem, and I make a few notes, and pretty soon it starts to turn into a prose passage, right? And it wants to become an essay instead. And you just kind of have to let the thing play with it, and let it become what it wants to become.
Evolving, you know, in a way that you hadn't imagined, and there it is. So the material, you know, has some authority, you know, and some
Liveliness.
liveliness. Yeah, well said. Absolutely.
Thank you very much for watching, and if you're feeling particularly generous, hit the subscribe or like button below. Join the ranks of my monstrous group of 25 subscribers. But anyway, thank you very much for watching, and I'll speak to you soon.